Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Oscar entered my wife Patricia's life through a mutual friend, and soon a connection formed between them. They began spending more and more time together, regularly meeting. I never saw Oscar as a real threat. He was always polite and sociable, but beneath the surface there was an elusive tension. In situations involving infidelity, especially when it concerns another man's wife, a certain caution is always required. While I was busy with work or away from home, they continued their secret meetings, caught up in the excitement of it all. However, despite all the thrill, something was missing, as they later confessed to me. One cold winter night became a turning point. Patricia invited Oscar over under the pretense of a casual evening with card games after dinner. He arrived around 7 in the evening, and Patricia greeted him with an embrace that seemed warm and sincere. At first, the embrace didn't alarm me. After all, they were friends. We settled in the living room, and I offered to get Oscar a beer from the kitchen. When I returned, what I saw deeply troubled me. They were sitting close together, holding hands, with Patricia's hand resting on his thigh. I couldn't hide my confusion and blurted out, "What's going on here?" Their faces tensed, as if they were preparing to tell me something that would shake me to the core. Patricia spoke first, her voice steady. "Darling, we need to talk, but please sit down." Despite the growing sense of unease, I sat down, bracing myself for what was to come. "Oscar and we've been close for 6 months," she began. "There's a connection between us that we couldn't ignore. One thing led to another." Her tone was calm, as if she was discussing something entirely reasonable. "I still care about you," she continued. "I never wanted to hurt you. That's why we've come up with a way that could work for all of us." At that moment, Oscar took over. "We can't just stop," he said, emotionless. "The chemistry between us is undeniable, but we don't want to exclude you from this. Our plan is to keep being together, but we want you to be involved too. You can watch and maybe sometimes even participate." He smiled, as if what he was proposing was completely logical. Patricia picked up on his idea. "This could even be enjoyable for you," she added with a smile. "I know what you look at online. I've seen the websites you visit." She seemed amused by my discomfort. "I checked your browser history. You're always searching for things like this on adult sites. So I thought this might interest you more than you're willing to admit." Her confidence was startling. "It might even improve our marriage," she suggested. Oscar pointed to some documents Patricia had pulled out of her bag. "All we're asking is that you sign this agreement. The terms are clearly laid out," he said as she placed the papers in front of me. The conditions were detailed: kisses, embraces, shared showers, or sleep. My head was spinning, my mouth dry, and I could barely speak. Patricia kept insisting, "I love you, but I also love Oscar. What he gives me is something I can't easily let go of. It's not about replacing you, it's just different." Oscar nodded, affirming her words. "Just sign the papers," she urged. "This is how things are now." I felt completely lost. Divorce wasn't what I wanted, but how could I agree to watch my wife with another man? As I looked at them, still holding hands, Patricia interrupted my thoughts with one final blow. "Maybe this will help you make your decision." She leaned in and kissed Oscar, pulling him closer. He responded, gently touching her cheek. I froze, watching as my wife passionately kissed another man right in front of me. Amid the shock, something stirred within me, a feeling I desperately tried to suppress but couldn't hide. Oscar noticed it first, his smile widening. "See?" he said with a smirk. "You like it." Patricia handed me the pen. The documents lay before me, the pen in my hand, and I hesitated, unsure if signing was the right thing to do. I exhaled heavily, feeling utterly confused and disoriented. I've encountered many cases of infidelity, but they were always part of my job. As a private detective running a security firm, I was used to divorce investigations taking up a large portion of my work. Looking back, I realize I didn't pay enough attention to the signs in my own life. When everything started to fall apart, I instinctively switched into professional mode. Clearly, they didn't see that coming. Calmly, I pulled out my small recorder and pressed the button. I wanted to ensure that every word of our conversation was recorded, just in case any disputes arose later. "I hope you both understand how serious this is," I began. "These discussions carry significant legal weight." My eyes skimmed over the documents lying in front of me. They were already signed and notarized. "I see you've both taken care of your part," I added. Oscar, as casual as ever, responded, "Yeah, we wanted to speed things up. We knew you'd agree eventually." He smirked. "Our notary, Geraldine, will be here soon to finalize your part. Then we can wrap this up." His enthusiasm reminded me of a child eagerly waiting to open birthday presents. I paused and asked the question that had been bothering me for a long time. "For the record, how long has this been going on behind my back?" The full reality of the situation hit me as Patricia's voice trembled in response. "Well, we've been married for 20 years, but for the past 4, I've been with Oscar." "But please, don't say it like that." She immediately became defensive. "Oscar is my soulmate. What we have is real, not what you're thinking." It was astonishing how far this had gone, and I hadn't noticed a thing. My irritation started to build. "So, this is how it is?" I muttered under my breath. "Don't act so righteous, Oliver," she snapped. "There's enough love to go around." I looked at them both, and it finally hit me that the marriage I thought was real had been nothing but a facade. Quietly, I picked up the pen, signed the document, and stood up. "I hope this makes you both happy," I said, handing over the papers. But instead of passing them over neatly, I scrawled across the page, "Not a chance." Patricia's eyes widened in shock when she saw what I had done. "What the hell are you doing, Oliver?" she yelled. I shrugged, my voice turning icy. "I don't share," I said dryly. My gaze shifted to Oscar, who stood there stunned. I grabbed a bottle of beer, took a slow sip, and then, with deliberate force, crumpled the contract and shoved it into my back pocket. Raising the bottle in their direction, I popped the cap off, spraying beer onto their smug faces. Without a word, I packed up my briefcase, laptop, and jacket, ignoring their outraged shouts, and headed for the door. Just as I was about to leave, I ran into Geraldine, the notary. She raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Looks like I showed up just in time for the fireworks," she said dryly. "You must be Oliver. Good luck with this mess," she added with a sarcastic smile. I got into my truck, reversed hard, and sped off, tearing through the front yard and crushing Patricia's beloved roses. As I pulled out onto the street, I clipped the rear of Oscar's expensive car. Yes, it was petty, I admit, but at that moment, I didn't care. At least I wasn't the one headed to the morgue. I drove straight to her parents' house, determined to take control of the situation. Although I'd always gotten along well with my in-laws, I wasn't about to let them paint me as the villain in this story. My phone buzzed with messages and calls, but soon it all went silent. When I arrived, I pressed the doorbell. After a few moments, I heard the familiar grumbling from the other side of the door. All right, I'm coming," muttered Patricia's father, Judge Michael Miller, as the porch light flicked on. He opened the door, clearly unhappy to see me at such a late hour. "Oliver, what are you doing here? And where's Patricia?" His face creased with worry. Unable to hold back, I snapped, "I have no idea where she is, probably floating on cloud 9 somewhere." Despite their daughter's flaws, her parents had always treated me with respect, but tonight there was no room for pleasantries. I handed him the crumpled contract and placed the recorder on the table. "What's this?" he asked, confused. "Just read it," I replied sharply. As he began to read the document, his expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Is this really happening?" he asked quietly, almost in a whisper. He asked a question, and I pressed the button to start recording. First, I asked if it would be okay to record the conversation to avoid any misunderstandings. As the recording played, his wife focused intently on the sounds. At some point, she loosened her grip on the robe she was holding tightly, and it slightly opened. Her hand darted to her lips, as if trying to stifle a gasp. The robe slid down further, revealing a black nightgown, elegant in its design. I couldn't help but think that his night had just gotten a lot worse. When the recording ended, he looked at me with an expression of complete helplessness. "There's no easy way out of this, is there?" he muttered, his voice heavy with resignation. "What would you do in my place?" His gaze fell, and a shiver ran through his body. "I understand, son." Then, the ring of the old landline phone shattered the silence. His wife quickly grabbed the receiver. "Hello? Mom? If Oliver is there, I need to talk to him right now." Her father immediately took the phone. "What's going on? Is there a problem?" A shout came from the other end. "Dad, what are you even talking about?" "This doesn't concern you or Mom," she said firmly. "This is between me and my husband. You need to get everything in writing, make a contract, or you'll drag everyone else into this." I could hear the voices in the background growing louder, and then there was a sudden, "Oh no." "We know everything," her father whispered into the phone before ending the call. He turned to me, exhaling deeply. "Take a break, son. Handle what needs to be done, but don't make any rash decisions, all right?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry for everything," I replied quietly. Placing a firm hand on my shoulder, he said, "This isn't your fault, son. Sometimes, no matter how well you tend to the garden, a snake will still find its way in." With those words, I left, got into my truck, and drove straight to the hotel where I had rented a room for the week. That evening, I was overwhelmed with rage and took it out on the minibar, smashing a few bottles before collapsing on the bathroom floor, feeling unbearably sick. Somehow, I managed to drag myself into the shower, clothes still on, and rinse off. After stripping off the wet clothes, I collapsed onto the bed and passed out. When I woke up the next morning, I still felt dazed. Realizing I didn't have any clean clothes, I called David Murphy, one of the few friends left who wasn't tied to my wife. I asked him to stop by and bring fresh clothes to room 620. David sounded concerned and asked what was going on. I promised to explain when he arrived. "Oh, and grab a couple of sandwiches and some coffee. I need you to get here as soon as possible." After that, I contacted the office to arrange surveillance on my wife and her lover. I called the bank to freeze all our personal and business accounts. Then, I settled the balance on our joint credit cards and closed them. I also disconnected her phone since it was registered under my company. Finally, I arranged to have all the utilities in the house turned off. Once all that was taken care of, I got in touch with a lawyer who recommended one of the best divorce specialists. "My brother's the best in the business if you want to make a real impact. Tell him I sent you, and he'll handle everything." Once everything was organized, the plan seemed straightforward. As I was wrapping up the final details, David arrived. I quickly got dressed, and we went out to grab breakfast. While I filled him in on what had happened, I was also consulting with the new lawyer about the next steps. We scheduled a meeting for 5 p.m. to discuss how to proceed. David shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe she did this. Not just the affair, but a contract too?" "Yeah," I sighed, "but there's still more that needs to be dealt with." "Take your time, man," he said, his voice full of understanding. "I never liked that Oscar guy. Now I know why. If you need anything at all, Mary and I are here for you." Mary, David's wife, had always treated me like family, like a younger brother. Knowing they would stand by me in this mess gave me at least a little comfort in the middle of this storm. After he left, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. My appearance was far from perfect, although it was a slight improvement compared to the previous day. After getting dressed, I headed straight to the bank. The moment I stepped inside, I was immediately escorted to the office of the senior vice president. I wasn't a millionaire, but my personal and business accounts were substantial enough to command their full attention. As soon as I sat down, he got straight to the point. "I'm not sure I understand why you're here. Yes, it's your money, and you have every right to do with it as you please, but perhaps there's something that might make you reconsider." Now, guess who worked there? That's right, Oscar, the senior financial advisor. I calmly placed the contract on the vice president's desk and turned on the voice recorder. His expression shifted from confusion to horror as he skimmed the document. But when he truly grasped the seriousness of what he was reading and hearing, his face turned a ghastly shade of white. "This is some kind of joke," he muttered in a trembling voice. I assure you this is no joke, I replied, my voice steady and growing louder. I am no longer doing business with a company that employs a scoundrel who sleeps with my wife behind my back. I raised my voice so the entire office could hear. I snatched the contract from his shaking hands and took the voice recorder. I couldn't help but think about how many others had been deceived in a similar manner. Tell Oscar Garcia that he'll be receiving legal papers soon. Have a nice day. As I walked out the door, I heard the vice president scream in panic, "Get Garcia in here immediately!" I allowed myself a quiet laugh as I left the building. Next, I went to a stationery store to make 3 copies of the contract. I knew the original had to be kept safe until my lawyer had reviewed it. After that, I headed to my insurance agent's office, and as luck would have it, guess who worked there? Yes, my soon-to-be ex-wife. I was quickly ushered into the office of the company owner, Miss Victoria Lee. As I passed by, I heard someone whisper, "Oliver," but I didn't pay it any mind, just smiled politely. Miss Lee rose from behind her desk and extended her hand for a greeting, though her uncertainty was evident. "Oliver, it's nice to see you. How can we help you today?" Her voice sounded tense. I didn't waste any time. "I'm sure you know why I'm here, Victoria. I'm canceling all my policies with your company as of today. I expect a refund immediately. I can't continue doing business with a company that employs a liar and a cheat." Her eyes widened in shock, her voice hardening. "Hold on, Oliver. Your personal issues shouldn't impact your business decisions with us." I didn't respond. Instead, I threw a copy of the contract on her desk. "Do you need to listen to the recording?" I asked. She looked at the document, her eyes pausing on the notary seal and signature. I saw her tense up. Without a word, she pressed the intercom button. "Patricia, come to my office." Moments later, Patricia, my soon-to-be ex-wife, entered, visibly shaken. "Yes, Miss Lee," she muttered. Without hesitation, Victoria spoke. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave the building immediately." Patricia wobbled and then fainted with a group of employees rushing to her aid. Unfazed, Miss Lee turned back to me. "Is your decision still final?" I stood up, shook her hand, and replied, "It's a pleasure to do business with people of principle. I think I'll continue working with your company after all." With that, I stepped over my unconscious former wife and headed straight to my lawyer. Callum Sampson, my attorney, was slightly older than me, but his sharp mind and resourcefulness made him seem much younger. He invited me in, offered me a drink, and asked his secretary to bring us some water. "So, Oliver," he began with a sly glint in his eye, "I talked to my sister, and she hinted that I'd like this. What have you brought me today?" After completing the draft agreement, I reached for the recorder and turned it on. When the recording finished, he seemed more engrossed in the document I handed him than in the actual playback. As soon as the tape fell silent, he leaned towards the intercom and pressed a button. His assistant quickly entered the office. "Linda, make 2 copies of this recording and put the original in the safe," he instructed, "and bring Mr. Daniels a new tape and recorder." He continued to study the contract, occasionally giving me attentive, curious glances. When he finally put the document down, his full attention turned to me. This is genuine, isn't it? No one could fabricate something like this out of thin air." He paused for a moment, contemplating the situation. "So what do you plan to do next?" "I want to destroy them," I said, my voice calm but brimming with malice. "I want them to suffer so much that they'll never find peace, work, or a future." A slow smile spread across his face. "In all my years, I've never come across anything like this. I wouldn't walk away from this case even if I were offered a fortune. Let's start by calling in a notary to certify everything." Leaning back in his chair with confidence, he added, "I've worked with her before. She's reliable. Once everything is notarized, we'll authenticate the recording. Then we'll head straight to the jury. They won't know what hit them." I nodded. "They're already on the brink of being fired. I've caused them trouble both at work and with the bank, but I know we can finish them off. And if this case goes to trial, you'll take it pro bono?" His eyes lit up as he leaned toward me. "Of course. They have no grounds for a defamation suit. We have ironclad evidence. As long as we stick to the truth, they're powerless. At that moment, I realized there was no way out for them. They had orchestrated their own downfall. We brought in the notary, and after reviewing the situation, she confirmed it without hesitation. Their actions were a blatant attempt to manipulate the system for their own gain. My lawyer, Callum, arranged a meeting with the judge, explaining the essence of our case. The judge looked at me with understanding and determination. "I understand how important this is for you, Oliver. I'll do everything in my power to ensure justice is served. But are you sure you want the jury to hear every detail?" My lawyer intervened. "Your Honor, my client demands full justice. He wants the marriage annulled without any financial compensation to the woman who betrayed him and her accomplice." The judge agreed. "Very well. Prepare the necessary documents and we'll see if the opposing side is willing to comply." We approached them, offering the option to either sign or consult a lawyer. Their response was immediate and full of rage. Both were on the verge of financial ruin, barely able to pay their utility bills, with unemployment looming over them. She adamantly refused to sign, and he clung to the hope of a hefty payout. In desperation, they found a lawyer willing to represent their interests. But they didn't know they were walking into a trap. They hid both the contract and the recording from their lawyer. When we met in Callum's office, everything was laid out on the table. My lawyer meticulously authenticated the recording in their presence. They arrived at 9 a.m., accompanied by her father, and the tension in the room was palpable. They were filled with fear, mixed with anticipation. Patricia, always the dramatist, approached me as if she were about to embrace me. I kept my distance, standing firm. Instead, I directed a caustic remark at her former lover. Patricia began to weave a web of excuses, blaming me for their ruined lives. Both had lost their jobs and now stood on the brink of financial collapse, with no prospects for the future. In response, I handed her a waiver of claims to the house. But without money, and with their lives in shambles, the document was useless to them. After several unsuccessful attempts to sell the property, it became clear that fate was not on their side. She was increasingly desperate for my return, to her world, her bed, and especially her financial affairs. However, my lawyer did not ignore their request. He responded with a question: "Is Mr. Garcia still in your life?" Her lawyer, wasting no time, dismissed the question as irrelevant. "We're just friends," he confidently stated. But my lawyer wasn't convinced. Calmly, he pulled out a document from his stack and slid it across the table toward her lawyer. "Let's try again," he said, staring intently at Patricia while her lawyer began reading the document. "Are you still involved with Mr. Garcia?" Patricia's face turned pale, and she looked as though she might crumble under the pressure. "I don't think I can answer that," she stammered, almost whispering. "It's too personal." My lawyer remained unfazed. "Don't worry," he said in an even tone. "In court, you'll be required to answer under oath." Leaning back in my chair, I felt a growing sense of satisfaction watching their situation spiral out of control. When her lawyer finished reading the contract, he looked like he was about to be sick. "You missed this earlier," he muttered toward my lawyer. "It's just rumors. You don't have solid proof." But my lawyer was prepared. Without losing a second, he produced a signed witness statement from their notary, Geraldine Schultz, and then my notarized statement detailing all the conversations and requests. And then came the decisive blow, an audio recording. "This," my lawyer said as he played the recording, "is the proof. Your clients knew what was going on and were fully involved in it." As the recording played, the panic on her lawyer's face was obvious, and then her father, who, by the way, was a judge, could no longer stay silent. He slammed his palm on the table, glaring at the lawyer. "Enough, Patricia." Then, turning to Patricia, his voice grew firm. "Sign the papers. Stop disgracing yourself. As for Garcia, I want him gone by tomorrow evening. His name came up in the divorce case, and he'll need a lawyer before Oliver makes his ruling." His words became even sharper when he addressed Patricia directly. "You're not going to get anything out of this. If this goes to court, you'll end up with even less. Your mother and I are deeply disappointed. Your brother has already said he won't bring his family over while you're living with us. You need to find somewhere else to live. Now your choice is Oscar, isn't it? You chose him over your husband. Maybe it will work out for you." Though under his breath, he muttered, "Not that I believe it will." As it turned out, Patricia's parents had been paying her legal fees all this time. With no other choice, she signed the papers, and Garcia swiftly disappeared from our lives. I had nothing to do with his sudden disappearance. 2 months later, I was officially divorced. It happened last night. Tonight, the Jones sisters promised to cheer me up, and tomorrow they'll be back again. I have to admit, life doesn't seem so bad anymore. Patricia lived with her parents for a while, but they eventually told her she had to live on her own and move forward. For a long time, Patricia couldn't find a job and bounced between staying with different friends until she eventually got involved in escort work. Yes, it sounds strange, but she did it. Maybe it's her calling. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. The atmosphere between Sarah and me was becoming more and more tense. I could hardly remember the last time we had any real intimacy, and the feeling of genuine connection seemed like something from another life. It had probably been almost 2 years since Sarah started distancing herself from me. Before that, I would say our intimate life was quite satisfactory. Sure, it had slowed down, maybe once or twice a week on good days, especially after a couple of drinks. But for a man of 55, I considered that a pretty decent result. However, for Sarah, who was 47, the prospect of approaching 50 frightened her as if she were about to undergo a painful surgery. Every time I tried to reassure her by telling her she was still beautiful and desirable, it only made things worse. Instead of comfort, my words seemed to awaken something in her that made her flee and slam the bedroom door shut if I said anything with even a hint of tenderness. People say menopause isn't so bad for women, but for men, it can feel like the end of the world. My intimate life didn't just slow down, it came to a complete stop. After 32 years of marriage, I had somehow become repulsive to my own wife. I couldn't understand what I had done to deserve her contempt, but every time I got close to her, she either snapped or grumbled. Nearly 3 years had passed where I wandered around the house at night and often ended up on the couch. The situation worsened when, foolishly, I agreed to let her turn the guest room into her sewing studio, so making it my bedroom wasn't even an option. I took long showers, hoping to relieve the tension, but even those brief moments of solitude were short-lived. Sarah would bang on the bathroom door so loudly that the entire neighborhood could hear her shout, "Richard, don't you dare waste water on filthy things! Our water bill is already through the roof, and I'm not cleaning the tiles again!" Our neighbor, Mrs. Smith, would give me sideways glances whenever we passed in the hallway, as if she was convinced I was some kind of deviant. And her husband, Mr. Smith, looked at me with pity, a slight smirk on his lips. I was on the edge. I was miserable. Sarah was miserable. Even the neighbors were caught in our domestic chaos. I started looking up divorce lawyers at work, too afraid to do it at home where I might get caught. Divorce seemed like a disaster waiting to happen. Sarah had never worked, so alimony was inevitable, and I'd be stuck paying rent. Worse, she would probably take most of what we had, except for the bed we no longer shared. The only grim comfort I had left was that by staying married, at least I didn't have to pay for 2 separate homes. If we divorced, I would be living in celibacy, barely able to afford cheap takeout, let alone dating. I felt completely trapped. So, when one evening I came home and saw Sarah sitting at the dinner table with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, her voice filled with something I couldn't quite place as she said, "We need to talk." I wasn't prepared. I wasn't really listening when Sarah started speaking, but the phrase "other men" cut through my haze. The wife who couldn't bear my touch was now talking about wanting to be with other men. My head spun. How had we gone from a fading but existent intimate life to this? What was I supposed to do now while she pursued new pleasures? She fell silent, waiting for my response. My anger flared and I shouted, "Sorry, Mrs. Smith." Then, turning to Sarah, I yelled, "So what am I supposed to do while you chase after every man you meet?" For a moment, her face showed shock, and I thought I had finally gotten through to her. But that fleeting victory quickly vanished when her expression hardened with rage. She slammed her hands on the table, then, unexpectedly, slapped me. That slap jolted me out of my stupor. Tears welled up in her eyes as she hissed, "This is why I can't stand you. I don't want to be with other men. I don't want to be with men at all, not even you." She sighed, wiped her tears, and deliberately took a sip of wine. "I wasn't talking about finding someone new. I'm done with intimacy. When you touch me, I get goosebumps. Even thinking about it disgusts me." She paused again, choosing her words. "It's unfair to you," she admitted. "Even though sometimes I feel like I could strangle you, I still love you. I love our life. But this is unbearable. I know you're suffering, and I understand that those long showers don't help." Her words hung in the air between us, leaving me speechless and shattered. The knock echoed in the quiet room, snapping me out of my thoughts. I was just about to speak when Sarah fixed her gaze on me. "I think it's time for you to start seeing other women," she said in an even voice, though there was an edge that cut through the air. "Other women?" I repeated, stunned. "You actually want me to sleep with someone else?" The surrealness of the moment left me speechless for a second. "Yes," she replied, her tone still calm but unmistakably laced with irony. "It's better than what we have now, don't you think?" Her words hung between us, and I didn't know how to respond. The absurdity of the situation made me reflect on how much my life had changed since the divorce. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Sarah, I'm 55 years old. I'm not wealthy, and I'm definitely not in the best shape. If even my own wife isn't interested in me, why should anyone else be? Believe me, I've thought about this." But Sarah had already anticipated my objections. "By the way, Victoria, a friend of mine from the gym, saw your pictures. She's willing to help," she said, casually handing me her phone. I stared at the screen, struck by Victoria's beauty. She looked around 40. Despite myself, I felt a slight spark of attraction as I studied her photo. "She's interested in me?" I mumbled in disbelief, raising my eyebrows. Before I could say anything else, Sarah reached across the table and gently shut my mouth. "Stop staring!" she snapped sharply. Her voice dripped with disdain as she continued, "I don't get it either, but some women like older men." Holding her phone, I kept staring at the photo, unable to process the strangeness of the situation. My mouth went dry, but I had no idea what to say. "So, what do you say?" Sarah asked, clearly losing patience. I nodded, uncertain and hesitant, not knowing what else to do. That seemed to satisfy her. "Great, I have a contract for you," she said, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. I blinked, surprised. "Don't worry," she added with a sly smile. "It just confirms that you'll spend the night with Victoria on Saturday, from 7 p.m. until 9 a.m. the next day. Do whatever you want. Make love, watch a movie, go out. It's your choice. But remember, you're still my husband. It's only for one night, no other women. If you cross the line, there will be consequences. You'll leave, and you'll have to pay. Got it?" I hesitated, not wanting to ruin the arrangement. "Maybe I should meet her first?" I asked uncertainly. "You'll see her on Saturday," Sarah replied dryly. "She has legs, and she's offering them to you. Isn't that enough?" Her irritation was obvious, so I quickly grabbed a pen and signed the paper without asking more questions. "Legs," I muttered under my breath, the word echoing in my head. Even on our honeymoon, Sarah had kept her distance. I ran a hand over my lips, which were dry from nerves. Satisfied, Sarah folded the signed document, put it in a folder, and left the room. As the door clicked shut behind her, it hit me that I hadn't even read the contract or asked for a copy. But what did it matter? As usual, my excitement outweighed caution, and so on Saturday evening, I stood in front of Victoria's door, ready for whatever awaited me. As soon as I stepped into her apartment, it became clear that the photographs hadn't done her beauty justice. She was absolutely mesmerizing. Without saying a word, she grabbed my hand and pulled me inside, hugging me tightly. "Hello, handsome. I've been counting down the days to this moment," she whispered softly. With those words, she pulled me even closer, and her lips met mine with a passion I had never experienced before. Every muscle in my body tensed, teetering on the edge of something indescribable, but she gently guided me toward the bedroom with quiet determination. What followed was slow, sensual, and left me breathless. Later, we ordered pizza and ate it in bed, a simple act, but it felt surprisingly intimate. I hadn't expected much from Victoria, but after 3 years I realized I had more to give, and she knew how to draw it out of me. It felt like the beginning of something incredibly rich, perhaps the most fulfilling period of my married life. One night with her energized me for weeks. I walked around with a smile on my face. My contented expression annoyed Sarah, though she only smirked and shook her head. We had finally found our rhythm in marriage, and for the first time in a long while, everything seemed peaceful. Sarah seemed to have rediscovered her playful side, and I started enjoying her company again. But my heart lived for Saturdays. Victoria and I would have dinner, catch a show, sometimes dance a little, and then head back to her place for a night that always felt magical. Sunday mornings were filled with her warmth and affection, making everything around me feel unreal. Occasionally, Sarah would joke about Victoria in her trademark teasing tone, never suspecting the truth. One day, Victoria mentioned that Sarah had once asked her about the possibility of recording us on video. Apparently, Sarah had said she missed certain aspects of our marriage, which was news to me. I wasn't sure about recording something so personal, but Victoria convinced me, especially in that moment. I agreed. She set up my phone, shot me a playful look, and then turned to the camera with a smirk. "Mrs. Anderson, is this the man you gave up? Well, he's mine now, you pathetic old witch." She burst out laughing before I had a chance to react, and then things continued. Later, I told her I didn't like what she said, and we recorded another video, this time without insults. She sent it to Sarah. The next Saturday, I drove to Victoria's, but no one answered the door. I reached for my phone to call her when suddenly a young woman approached me. "Mr. Anderson? Richard Anderson?" she asked. I nodded, thinking she had a message from Victoria. Instead, she handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." Before I could process what was happening, she snapped a picture of me standing there in shock. As she walked away, she casually mentioned that the envelope contained divorce papers, a restraining order, and contact information for Sarah's attorney. I was instructed to arrange a supervised visit to collect my things. My calls to Victoria went unanswered, and within a few days, her number was disconnected. Sarah had also blocked me. The only communication I had left was through her lawyer. Eventually, arrangements were made for me to collect my things under police supervision. The locks had been changed, but when I arrived, there was Oliver, an old friend, holding the key. "Sarah asked me to let you in," he said quietly, with a hint of regret in his voice. "She doesn't want to see you, Richard. I'm sorry." Oliver had been a cop for as long as I could remember. He greeted the sheriff's deputy with a nod. They knew each other well. "It's not your fault, buddy," he added, trying to offer some comfort. I looked at him and half joked, "Any chance you've got a couch I can crash on?" He shook his head, just as I expected. "Can't do it, man. I care about both of you, and I don't want to get in the middle." I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. Oliver had been my best friend since childhood, and he had been the best man at my wedding. He had known Sarah almost as long as I had, but that knowledge didn't make the situation any easier to accept. "Yeah, I know. It sounds just as sad to me as it does to you." For 2 days, I stayed in a dirty, run-down hotel, trying to figure out what to do next. Eventually, I found a small, cramped studio to rent for a month. It barely fit my belongings, but I didn't have the financial freedom to choose anything better. After consulting with a lawyer, I learned how to handle my finances, but by the time I reached the bank, Sarah had already withdrawn nearly all the money from our accounts. The same had happened with the investment fund we had been using. I couldn't help but wonder, how did things get this bad? Why was Sarah so furious that she not only filed for divorce, but also accused me of cheating? I laid it all out for my lawyer, explaining the strange arrangement Sarah had proposed. I even mentioned the contract she made me sign. His first question was simple. What exactly was in that contract? The truth was, I had no idea. I hadn't bothered to read it thoroughly at the time. All I knew was what Sarah had told me. The contract allowed me to spend Saturday evenings with Victoria, the woman Sarah had introduced me to at the gym. The rest of the week, I was supposed to belong exclusively to her. The agreement also outlined the consequences for violating these terms. Now I stood facing the collapse of my marriage and financial ruin. My lawyer looked at me with disbelief. "So what did you do to make all of this happen?" he asked. "Honestly, I'm not sure," I replied. "I thought Sarah and I were fine, until suddenly we weren't." Still trying to process everything, I listened as my lawyer suggested bringing a copy of the contract to our next meeting. I shrugged, explaining that I didn't have a copy. Sarah had never given me one, and it hadn't even occurred to me to ask for it. The frustration on my lawyer's face was clear. I could almost hear his thoughts. Another careless mistake. I tried to explain that this whole strange arrangement had been Sarah's idea. She had introduced me to Victoria and organized everything. My lawyer calmed down a little. "Does Victoria know about this arrangement with Sarah? Can she confirm your version?" I nodded. Victoria knew everything. The lawyer asked for her contact details, an address, phone number, anything that could help. That's when I had to deliver the bad news. Victoria had left town, and her phone was disconnected. I had no way to reach her. My lawyer sighed heavily, clearly disappointed. "Do you know any of her friends or family who might be able to contact her?" he continued. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I shook my head. "No, we didn't have a relationship beyond, well, the arrangement. We never connected on a deeper level." The lawyer rubbed his temples, obviously irritated. "So it's just your word against your wife's?" he asked, clearly frustrated. I didn't need to answer. We both knew the answer. I had messed everything up, and there was no easy way out of this situation. When the day of the trial arrived, Sarah presented a heartbreaking story. With tears in her eyes, she told the judge how she had gone through menopause, while her ungrateful husband cheated on her with a younger woman. She claimed that I had even forced this woman to send her a humiliating video of the two of us in bed. Adding to the drama, Sarah declared that Victoria had mocked her in the video, calling her a fat old cow. My lawyer asked her where she had gotten the video, and Sarah confidently replied, "From my phone." Then she started crying again, recounting her trauma. "And what was your husband doing while this woman insulted you?" my lawyer asked grimly. "He was shouting that he was about to finish," she sobbed, "and it seemed to excite him even more." The courtroom fell silent, broken only by Sarah's weeping. The judge, an elderly woman with gray hair, looked at me as if I were the lowest scum. To make matters worse, the judge turned out to be Mrs. Smith, someone I hadn't expected to see handling my case. Sarah's lawyer submitted the video as evidence, but the judge announced she would review it privately. Before anyone could react, Sarah started speaking again. "I loved him," she declared with emotion. "For 32 years I took care of him, nursed him when he was sick, gave him everything, even my body. And now, because I'm no longer as young as I used to be, he threw me away." She turned to me, her face wet with tears. "I was going through hormone therapy. Why couldn't you just wait for me?" As Sarah wept on the witness stand, I looked around the courtroom. It seemed like everyone was moved by her story, everyone except me. Even my lawyer discreetly wiped a tear from his eye. During cross-examination, Sarah firmly denied knowing about any agreement allowing me to see Victoria. "Why would I agree to the love of my life being with another woman, especially one younger than me?" she cried, her voice breaking with pain. "So where do you think your husband was on Saturday nights?" my lawyer asked. Without a moment's hesitation, Sarah burst into tears again. "I don't know," she sobbed. "I have no idea." "Where did your husband spend the entire weekend?" the lawyer asked with a sarcastic tone. "Fishing," Sarah replied, her voice dripping with bitter irony. "He always came back smelling like fish." The courtroom erupted in laughter. Mrs. Smith, strangely enough, had managed to make everyone laugh. Even the judge chuckled softly before tapping her gavel to restore order. When it was my turn to testify, I began explaining how Sarah introduced me to Victoria and orchestrated this entire mess. During cross-examination, The opposing lawyer demanded that I produce a copy of this supposedly existing agreement. Shifting uncomfortably in my seat, I had to admit that I didn't have it. Only Sarah had that document. The judge snorted, clearly disappointed with my explanation. Sarah's lawyer then held up a photograph and asked, "Is this the woman you knew as Victoria?" I glanced at the photo, nodded slightly, and replied, "Yes." Addressing the judge, the lawyer confidently stated, "Your Honor, during our investigation we discovered that this woman is not Victoria at all. In fact, she's an escort named Emily Morton, with a long history in several cities. She usually disappears after a few months, and we believe she has already vanished." With a smug smile, the lawyer returned to his desk, holding a stack of documents. "Your Honor, these are financial records from Mr. Anderson's account, obtained by court order. Mrs. Anderson is not listed in these documents and did not have access to these funds." I jumped from my chair, outraged. "We've always had separate accounts, but Sarah manages all our finances. She has my passwords. She controls everything." Sitting at her table, Sarah sharply denied it. "That's a lie, Your Honor. I don't know his passwords. He never shared them with me." The judge banged her gavel again. "Enough. Speak only when addressed." Sarah's lawyer shoved the financial reports in front of me. "Mr. Anderson, look at the highlighted transactions from the last 6 months." His voice was firm. "What do you see?" I scanned the paper, confused. "They look like transfers from my account." "And how much were these transfers?" he pressed. $300 each, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. "But I didn't authorize them." The lawyer's eyes narrowed. "And can you tell us on which days of the week these transactions occurred?" I hesitated. "You want me to check each one?" "No need," he said, smirking. "Just name the day." It took a moment to realize. Saturdays, I finally understood. They were all on Saturdays. Smiling, the lawyer waved another stack of papers in the air. "These payments went to an account linked to Miss Morton, the woman posing as Victoria. These were her fees. While your wife was likely struggling at home, you were draining the family's finances for your personal pleasures." I tried to explain how Victoria, or rather, Emily, had manipulated the whole situation, but my words were drowned out by the judge's clear irritation. The outcome was inevitable. Sarah was awarded the apartment, 80% of our savings and investments, and a significant portion of my salary as alimony. On top of that, I was also ordered to cover her legal fees and maintain her apartment for 3 years. As we left the courtroom, Sarah was in tears, whispering repeatedly, "But I loved him," over and over again. She had won, but it didn't look like a victory. For a moment I thought about comforting her, but when I looked up I realized it wasn't necessary. My best friend Oliver was already holding her, and they were walking away together. I wasn't surprised when Oliver moved into that apartment shortly after the divorce. I didn't hold it against him. The apartment I had renovated for Sarah was far better than his shabby bachelor pad. The following years were tough, emotionally and financially. I found myself frequenting rundown bars where the drinks were watered down and the women were even cheaper. After my marriage fell apart, I found myself involved in more physical relationships than I ever had while married, but none of them brought me true satisfaction. Looking back, I would gladly trade all those empty moments for just one more night with Victoria. Surprisingly, I wouldn't have cared if Oliver was with Sarah, though it did bother me that not only was he sharing a bed with her, but he was also living off me, using my money to pay for the apartment they shared. From what I heard, being with Sarah was like being with a lifeless mannequin. This realization only hit me after I started interacting with women like Victoria and others of her level after the divorce. And a year later, during a business trip, I unexpectedly ran into Emily Morton. To my surprise, she greeted me warmly, showing no sign of guilt for the role she played in the downfall of my marriage. "It was a golden opportunity for me," she said, smiling. "I enjoyed spending time with you. Plus, I made decent money, not to mention that the rent for that fancy apartment was paid. It was the best place I'd lived in for a long time," she added with a sly smile. "And the other 6 nights, I could invite anyone I wanted." I couldn't hold a grudge. She even lowered her usual rate and stayed with me until late into the night. I missed the conference, lying in bed with her and snacking on samosas. Eventually, the conversation shifted to Oliver. I knew Oliver back when he was still working in crime prevention. He was one of those cops who turned a blind eye to certain things in exchange for a small favor. Sometimes it was just a quick meetup in an alley. Not that he was much of a talker, she laughed. Honestly, I was shocked when your wife chose him over you. He's not particularly attractive, quite scrawny, and let's just say his hair has seen better days. I smirked, understanding what she meant. I guess that was enough for Sarah. She always preferred to get things over with quickly, I said. Though to be honest, I always suspected she would have preferred to avoid intimacy altogether, at least until everything fell apart. Her eyes began to fill with tears. You really treated me like a person. You took me out. We went dancing. We had real dates. No one had done that for me since high school. I want to help you. I'll testify against Sarah. I'll tell the whole truth. She spoke with anger and conviction. We filed an appeal in court, and soon the legal battles began. 5 weeks later, the case was closed. Emily and I exposed Sarah for who she really was, proving that she orchestrated everything, with Oliver's help. I no longer had to pay alimony to Sarah, and the court ordered her to return my money. Sarah had outsmarted me, but the truth always comes out. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. Imagine being married for 43 years, and suddenly your spouse asks for a year of complete freedom. No contact, no rules, and the possibility of forming new relationships. How would you react? This is the exact situation I found myself in. Here's how it all started. Oscar Anderson, the successful CEO of a family business, had just arranged a surprise trip to celebrate many years of marriage with his wife, Poppy. Little did he know, their life was about to experience a significant upheaval. For years, Oscar had worked tirelessly to build a thriving company that had been passed down through his family for generations. He devoted himself to providing his family with a stable and comfortable life, balancing his role as a business leader with active community involvement. Good evening, dear, Oscar greeted warmly as he entered the kitchen after a long day at work. Poppy glanced at him briefly from her seat at the table, her face expressionless, giving nothing away. I thought you'd be home earlier, she remarked. What's with the red envelope? Valentine's Day was last week. I had some business to finish, Oscar replied, setting his briefcase and the envelope down on the coffee table. He tapped the envelope gently. We need to talk about this tonight. Oscar sat down across from her and noticed 2 glasses of red wine already poured. Beside her glass were a pen and a notebook, which piqued his curiosity. How was your day? Poppy asked, sounding casual, though her tone carried a certain detachment, as if she wasn't particularly interested in his answer. It was fine, Oscar replied cautiously, his gaze drifting toward the notebook. But I sense this isn't just about my day. Poppy sighed heavily, as if gathering the courage to speak. You're right, she began. Lately I've been thinking a lot, about my life, about us. After organizing a reunion for my sorority sisters after so many years, losing 2 close friends to cancer, and with the kids leaving home, I've started to wonder where I'm heading. She paused, looking directly into Oscar's eyes. And that brings me to our marriage. 43 years is a long time. Some of my sorority friends are already on their 2nd, even 3rd marriages. She leaned back in her chair and continued. So where does that leave us? What keeps us together? And more importantly, what will keep us together for the next 20 years? Oscar listened intently, his mind racing. I understand, he said slowly. I've been reflecting on my life too. Some men go through a midlife crisis, buy expensive cars, or start dating younger women. I'm grateful I didn't take that path. I have an incredible wife who keeps me grounded. And how can I make the next phase of our life something to look forward to? Poppy smiled faintly. That's why I love you, Oscar. You really listen. Most men wouldn't even try to understand. She took a deep breath before continuing. But I think I have a solution. My whole life, I've lived under someone else's roof. First, it was my father's house, then the sorority dorm in college. After we married, I moved into this house, a wedding gift from your grandparents. Her voice grew more passionate. Being with you has been wonderful, but not entirely fulfilling. I've always been the wife of the Chamber of Commerce president, the wife of the church council member, the wife of the country club president. I've always been in your shadow. You are the sun, Oscar, and I'm one of the moons orbiting around you. Oscar sat in silence, unsure where her words were leading. I need to step out of this orbit, Poppy said firmly. If I don't, I'm afraid I'll lose myself completely. She took a deep breath before continuing. I want to leave. I've thought about this long and hard. I need a break. Freedom. Call it what you will. A year, with no contact between us. I'll move out and live on my own, and during that time we can both reflect. Oscar was stunned, his mind struggling to keep up. No contact at all? He asked in disbelief. I understand you need space, but no communication at all, that seems too much. Poppy nodded. It will be hard for both of us, she admitted. I'll think about you every day, but after a year we'll meet again and decide what comes next. Oscar stared at her, bewildered. His life, once so neatly organized, was now crumbling right before his eyes. Our lives are so closely intertwined, Poppy began, her voice calm but firm. How can we possibly untangle them? It will feel like we're no longer husband and wife, she explained, as if it were self-evident. She continued, outlining her vision of the future. They would drift apart, each focusing on their own interests, exploring new passions. Poppy shared that she couldn't wait to take feminist courses and immerse herself in fresh perspectives. It's like a break, but without bitterness or distrust, she said, almost cheerfully. We'll still be lovers, just apart for a year. Couples in the military do it all the time. It works for them. Oscar listened, but with every word she spoke, a cold fear crept into his heart. You mentioned you'd behave like a free woman, seeing new people, he began, his voice trembling with anxiety. Does that mean you plan to see other men? Poppy's smile was faint and indifferent. Perhaps, she admitted, keeping her tone composed. But I doubt anyone will rush to invite me to a fancy dinner or anything like that. Oscar's face tensed, his worry growing. And if you do end up seeing someone, does that mean you'll, well, sleep with them? His voice shook as he tried to stay calm. Poppy shrugged slightly. Maybe, she said, still unperturbed. How else can I fully understand what it means to be a woman? You're the only man I've ever been with, Oscar. I just want to be on the same level as you. Oscar's face tightened, anger starting to simmer inside him. You seem to be forgetting something important. We're married. We made vows to share life together, to go through everything as one. I've kept my word, and I expect the same from you. Poppy's response was dismissive. Let's see how things are in a year, she said, waving off his concerns. We'll figure it out when the time comes. Oscar's patience was wearing thin. There's no guarantee you'll come back to me at all, he said, his voice rising. What if you fall in love with someone else? What if I'm no longer the one you want? Oh, don't be so dramatic, Poppy scoffed. It's just physical intimacy, Oscar, nothing more. When we reunite after a year, you'll be grateful everything is back to normal. Don't make it out to be more than it is. I'm trying to grow, to become more confident, and that will make me a better partner for you. Oscar felt the ground slipping from under him. A year without contact? It seemed too extreme. Why can't we work this out through therapy? He suggested, trying to find a compromise. Poppy shook her head, her resolve unwavering. Talking isn't enough. I don't want to just discuss change. I need to live it. If we don't take a real break, I'll keep relying on you and won't be able to grow. I need to know what it's like to be apart so I can come back with a clearer mind. Oscar's voice was barely a whisper. I don't think I can survive this. But Poppy was resolute. Oscar, I need to do this now. It's better to go through a year of uncertainty and stress than to drag this out for years. When it's over, we'll be stronger. Oscar's heart clenched. When are you planning to move out? He asked, his voice hollow. I've already rented an apartment for the next year. I'll start moving this weekend. Poppy replied, as if it were just another task on her list. Oscar felt the ground completely give way beneath him. He stammered, trying to find the right words. "Can't we at least talk about this in more detail before you make such a big decision?" he pleaded. Poppy reached out, placing her hand on his. "I'm really grateful that you're willing to discuss this," she said softly. "I truly believe that in the long run, this will make our relationship better. I love you for your understanding." Oscar pulled his hand away, her words cutting deep. "You're giving me far too much credit," he said painfully. "I don't understand why you're doing this, and to be honest, I don't support it. It feels like this is happening no matter what I want, like my feelings don't even matter." Without saying another word, he stood, his head spinning. "At the moment, I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't even know where to begin or how to handle this situation. My head is spinning like a whirlwind. Maybe we just need to sleep on it, and tomorrow evening we can figure everything out. Are you going to bed, or are we already starting to drift apart from each other?" "Not yet, darling," Poppy softly replied. "I need to finish all the details of my move, but I'll join you soon." With a heavy heart, Oscar climbed the stairs, exhausted. He collapsed onto the bed, but sleep wouldn't come. His thoughts were a tangled mess of uncertainty, questions endlessly spinning in his head, offering no clear answers. Later that night, Poppy quietly slipped into bed next to him, gently pressing her body against his. She kissed his shoulder, and he felt her warm tears soak into his skin as she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Oscar." "I'm sorry too, Poppy," he responded, his voice barely audible. "I love you," she whispered, her words filled with emotion. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "Is this the last time I'll hear you say that?" Her voice was soft, but with a glimmer of hope as she replied, "I want this to make us better, not worse. I'm leaving to become a better wife, a better lover, and I will come back." The next morning, Oscar woke up earlier than usual. For the first time, he didn't make Poppy her morning coffee in bed. Instead, he left the house, got into his car, and texted his friend Tony. He needed advice, a way to make sense of the chaos around him. After Oscar explained Poppy's plan, Tony listened carefully and then looked at him seriously. "Honestly, man, it sounds like she already has someone else, but she's hesitating to make the final move. She's testing how things will play out. If it works out with him, you'll be her second choice. If it doesn't, she'll come back, pretending to be renewed and ready to be the perfect wife again. You're her backup plan, Oscar, while she figures it all out." "How do I stop her from using me like that?" Oscar asked, feeling a knot tighten in his stomach. "Let her go, and do it quickly," Tony said firmly. "Take control. The day she moves out, file for divorce. Make it clear that she's the one leaving. Divorce will take about 5 to 6 months. If for some reason you still want her back, just don't sign the final papers. That way, you'll be in control." Tony continued, "And remember this, if she cheats and you take her back, it'll be easier for her to cheat again. And one more thing, keep calm. Don't lose control, don't yell. If things get out of hand, especially in court, losing your temper will only hurt you. Act like you agree with her decision, like you understand." As Oscar was leaving the car dealership, his eyes fell on a black convertible. On impulse, he decided to buy it. "If things are going this way, I might as well get something good out of this year," he joked to Tony with a grin. When he got home that evening, Poppy was already there, her anxiety evident. "Oscar, darling, where are you?" she called, her voice full of worry. "I missed you this morning. Can we talk? I've been thinking a lot since our conversation last night." Oscar kept his tone calm. "I needed some time alone. The drive helped clear my head. I've been doing a lot of thinking, too." "I can take the day off if you need me," Poppy offered, her voice softening. "I know I turned your world upside down last night. I'm really worried about you, my wonderful husband. Just tell me what you need. We can talk now, at lunch, or dinner, whenever. I need you to be here. I'm afraid of the path I feel like I'm heading down. Please, Oscar, I need your advice." A flicker of resentment sparked in Oscar as she suddenly sought comfort, despite everything she had said. Taking a deep breath, he quietly replied, "I need more time, Poppy. I really need to think about this separation and what it means for us. I'll be in the study, I'll close the door, turn off my phone, and try to figure out what to do next. Why don't we stick to our usual dinner time today? Oscar suggested. I'll take care of everything so you can relax and not worry about cooking or cleaning. Poppy quickly agreed, grateful for the offer. However, when they later sat down at the table, an unspoken tension filled the room. During dinner, Poppy enthusiastically shared her plans about moving into her new apartment and the courses she intended to take. She asked Oscar if she could take some of their furniture with her, and he briefly nodded in response. "Thank you for being considerate," Poppy said with a smile. "You're so kind." Oscar restrained himself from making a sarcastic remark. Instead, he said, "I doubt all your things will fit in a 200-square-foot apartment. What's your plan for the rest?" When Poppy suggested leaving some items in the house, Oscar firmly shook his head. "If you're moving, everything has to go with you. This can't be a backup option while you start a new life." Poppy's initial excitement about her decision began to fade. "You're okay with me taking the bed, but now you're creating issues about the other things," she said, showing her irritation. "What am I supposed to do if I can't leave them here?" "If you want to be independent, why are you asking me for help?" Oscar responded coldly. "You chose to leave and live on your own, so why do you expect me to step in now? You can always rent a storage unit. There are plenty around the city." The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument about logistics. In the end, Oscar decided to stop beating around the bush. "Poppy, I've been thinking a lot since we first talked about all this. If I have to be without a wife for a while, maybe I should consider making some changes," he stated bluntly. Poppy stared at him in shock. "What changes are you talking about?" "I'll be free, and I want to change my life," Oscar said calmly. "Maybe I should think about replacing my wife with someone younger and more interesting, instead of staying with the outdated version." "Wait a minute," Poppy flared up. "I'm doing this to become a better version of myself for you. There's no reason for you to start looking for someone else." "I don't like your plan either," Oscar retorted. "But you made it clear that my feelings don't matter. You were going to do what you wanted regardless of how I felt. You didn't care what it meant to me to have a wife who wants to be with other men. So, while you do whatever you want, I'll do the same over the next year. Let's see how it all turns out." The argument escalated to the point where Poppy eventually stormed out of the house, leaving Oscar alone. A red envelope with their travel plans remained unopened on the coffee table, a reminder of what once was. In the following weeks, Oscar threw himself into work and enjoyed his newfound freedom. He redecorated the house, removing family photos and replacing them with sports memorabilia. He started grilling steaks outside and listening to jazz at full volume, things Poppy had never approved of. Meanwhile, Poppy settled into her new apartment and began taking feminist theory courses. However, the joy of this new phase in her life was overshadowed by the growing distance between her and their children, who didn't understand her choices. As time passed, both Oscar and Poppy found themselves navigating unfamiliar territory. Although he didn't want to, Oscar attended court-ordered marriage counseling sessions. The therapist explored the reasons behind their separation. Poppy insisted that she needed to rediscover herself, while Oscar remained adamant that her desire to be with other men was something he could not tolerate. During this time, Oscar started spending time with two women, Linda, a striking widow with a young son, and Sarah, a former professional swimmer now working in real estate. While he enjoyed their company, he stayed true to himself and decided to remain celibate until his marriage was officially over. On the other hand, Poppy fully immersed herself in her new life, going to clubs with her recently divorced friends and enjoying the attention of other men. However, a chance encounter with a charming stranger named Nick led to unexpected consequences. As the year-long separation neared its end, the tension between Oscar and Poppy reached its peak. Poppy was confident that Oscar would take her back without hesitation, but Oscar had changed. Her betrayal had left a wound that would not heal so easily. The tension reached its peak when the couple's children discovered incriminating photos of Poppy's infidelity, sealing the fate of their already crumbling marriage. The day of reckoning arrived when Oscar and Poppy met at the lawyer's office to finalize the inevitable. Poppy arrived first, stylishly dressed in a new outfit, radiating hope that perhaps there was still a chance for reconciliation. Oscar arrived shortly after her, calmly placing a bright red envelope on the table. "Apologies for the delay," he murmured. After exchanging quick, polite greetings, the lawyers got straight to business, presenting the divorce papers. Oscar and Poppy signed the documents as previously agreed. Once the paperwork was complete, Oscar turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked, his voice calm but devoid of emotion. Poppy took a deep breath. "This year has been incredibly hard without the person I love by my side. But through these difficulties, I've grown. I've gained a deeper understanding of myself and our marriage. I need to thank you, Oscar, for giving me the space to reflect. Now, more than ever, I am committed to our union. I promise, you will never regret giving me another chance. I will prove my loyalty to you for the rest of my life." Oscar remained unmoved, his face betraying no reaction. When she finished, he responded in an even tone, "Trust is the foundation of everything, Poppy. Our vows were built on that, on loyalty. Without trust, love cannot exist. That's why we're here, signing these divorce papers. I can only hope that we both will be honest with ourselves." He paused before continuing. "Over the past year, I've interacted with other women, but I never allowed myself to cross certain boundaries." He locked eyes with Poppy. "Can you say the same? Have you been faithful to me?" The question caught Poppy off guard. She blinked, startled, and quickly replied, "Yes, of course, I've been faithful." Oscar's expression hardened. He took the red envelope, pulled out a photograph, and placed it in front of her. The picture showed Poppy passionately kissing Nick at a nightclub. "Is this your idea of loyalty?" he asked, his tone sharp. Poppy's face flushed with embarrassment. She stammered, "It was just a kiss. It meant nothing. I didn't cheat." Oscar didn't respond immediately, instead producing another, far more compromising photo. Poppy's eyes widened in shock, horror spreading across her face. "Where did you get this?" she asked in panic. "Were you spying on me?" Oscar's voice trembled with restrained anger. "Our son's girlfriend took these. She happened to be at the same club. Our son found out from her. It's a disgrace to our family." As the weight of her actions settled in, Poppy's face paled. Tears began to well in her eyes, while Oscar's voice rose, filled with unbearable emotion. "Do you have any idea what it was like for our son to see his mother, in a crowded club, behaving like this with some random guy? He had to endure that shame. Can you even imagine what was going through his mind when he saw that photo? And now you wonder why the kids won't answer your calls?" Casting one last glance at his lawyer, Oscar handed over the signed divorce documents. "File them," he ordered firmly. Poppy's voice was desperate as she tried to justify herself. "Oscar, it was meaningless. It meant nothing to me, and it meant nothing to Nick. It was just physical. There was no love involved." Oscar's eyes grew even colder, his gaze icy. "That's what makes it even worse, Poppy," he replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. "The fact that it meant nothing to you, knowing how much it meant to me. Do you even realize how deeply that hurts?" His words were the final crushing blow. "That's the cruelest thing you could have said to me," she whispered, broken. Poppy burst into tears, her body shaking with uncontrollable sobs as she pleaded for forgiveness. "No, please, no, I want to be your wife again. Please forgive me. I promise, I'll be faithful from now on. Please don't leave me. I don't want to end up like one of those women who are left alone after a divorce. Don't push me away. I beg you, forgive me." Her desperate words didn't reach him. Oscar had already stepped out the door, and her pleas gradually faded as he made his way to his BMW. The rest of the day passed in quiet solitude. With a glass of whiskey in hand and a slowly smoldering cigar nearby, he sat on the terrace, lost in thought. In the evening, his phone buzzed non-stop, calls from Poppy and messages from Linda, Sarah, and the kids. But Oscar decided to ignore them all. The next morning, Linda gently shook his shoulder, waking him from a restless sleep. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her face full of concern. Oscar forced a faint smile. "I'm okay, I guess. Why wouldn't I be? At least you haven't lost your sense of humor even after the divorce. She sat beside him, wrapping her arms around his shoulders. What's next? Will I be a part of what's to come? Without hesitation, Oscar replied, Of course you will. I'm here for you. Take your time. You're still processing the end of a long marriage. It's no small thing. She squeezed his hand, offering support. I'll be here for as long as it takes. As winter set in, with its crisp air and white snowflakes, Oscar slowly started to adjust to his new reality. He declined an invitation to meet friends over the weekend, feeling the need to be alone and reflect. On Saturday morning, Sarah appeared at his doorstep. I heard it hasn't been easy, she said kindly, but at least it's behind you now. Oscar nodded and invited her inside. They sat on the couch, and after a long silence, Sarah took a deep breath. There's something I need to tell you, she began quietly. I've been meaning to say this for a while, but you had so much on your plate. She hesitated before continuing, and honestly, I didn't want to ruin our time together. Oscar tensed, bracing himself for what was coming. I'm engaged, Sarah confessed softly. We've been together for 3 years. Oscar blinked, stunned. What? Why did you hide this from me? Sarah explained that her feelings for him were always based on friendship, not romance. That doesn't change the fact that I deeply care about you as my best friend, she reassured him. I love you, but not in the way you might have thought. I can't marry you, but if he's okay with it, I'd love to keep our friendship as it's always been. As Sarah's words sank in, Oscar felt an unexpected sense of relief. The pressure of choosing between Sarah and Linda vanished. Thank you for your honesty, he said, squeezing her hand. You're my best friend, and I'm glad we can stay that way. In the following weeks, Oscar focused on healing and moving forward. He spent more time with both Sarah and Linda, appreciating their unwavering support. Meanwhile, Poppy struggled to adjust to her new life. She had moved into a smaller apartment in a less prestigious part of town, and her finances were strained due to the terms of the divorce. She tried to rebuild her relationship with the children, but they responded coldly and distantly, their wounds still fresh. Poppy was diagnosed with deep depression, and she even lost her job after frequent absences. Her employer told her, I'm sorry, but we need a reliable employee. You're fired. The weight of loneliness pressed even harder on her. The children continued to avoid her, and so did her friends. Work had been her lifeline, but now even that was gone. What a fool I am, she often whispered to herself. But it was too late to think about that now. She had made her choice. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.